Hello, my name is Vanessa. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. I started posting on shorts and reels because a certain other platform is going down, and so I think I have a couple new subscribers, which I'm really excited about. So I thought it would be fun to go through a couple of the book series that I'm reading / in the middle of and tell you whether or not I'm continuing them and why. By the way, I did include duologies in this. To be honest, it just gives me more to talk about, and I do want to talk about some of these duologies, so they're in there. The first series I'm in the middle of is the 5th season trilogy. I think like on my channel and on my Goodreads I make it seem like I've already read the whole thing, but actually I've been putting off the 3rd one of this for a really long time. And I think the reason why is because I liked the first 2 so much, and I compare so many fantasy books or even like sci fantasy books to this book series right now that I struggle to pick up the 3rd one. I often do this with things I like. I have this weird completionist anxiety when I really enjoy something. If I keep putting it off, then it's never over. Do you know what I mean? But I really want to get to the 3rd one this year. I cannot recommend this one enough. This is about a fantasy world where the world will unmake itself every couple hundred years through a series of apocalyptic natural events. So for instance, that could be an enormous like earth core shattering earthquake that will cause an enormous tsunami, which causes flash flooding, and essentially all of the humans and all the wildlife and all of the ecosystems get destroyed in that time. And that happens every couple of hundred years on this planet. And there are humans and there are civilizations on this planet, but humans have had to very quickly learn how to adapt to these circumstances and understand that whatever civilizations they build are ultimately futile because the world will destroy itself again, and they're gonna have to live with that. Where the fantasy element comes into this, there is this allusion to this past civilization that is a little bit more like alien, that they don't fully understand but might have had a stronger connection to the Earth's core than humans are able to kind of intuit. And there actually are some humans who have the magical ability essentially to deeply sense the Earth and to affect, like, maybe they can affect some tectonic plates and they can cause earthquakes or whatever, things like of that nature. And rather than use them for good, they're massively ostracized because people are terrified of their powers causing one of these cataclysmic events in this already super fragile human civilization. What was really fun about this is I think that like just the speculative fiction aspect of what would civilization have to look like, what would political structures have to look like if humans knew that all of it was just gonna go to waste in a couple hundred years, regardless of anything that they could possibly do. So there's a lot of like political aspects of this. I think this is mostly a political book about oppression of these people that have this ability and exploitation, which is really interesting. But I also just think like the survivalist nature of the circumstances of this book itself are really interesting. We also get to follow an older woman character in this book, and I just think it's really refreshing to see that. So I highly recommend this book series. It kind of has it all. I really love this one. So yes, of course. My next one, see, this is what I meant by I'm not just doing series. This is a duology, but Vicious. I gobbled this up in 2 days, which I'm a slow reader, so that is very fast for me. This is about, it's kind of like a supervillains, almost sci-fi story. So it kind of is like on the tails of the whole superhero hype that we've been seeing, but it's about supervillains rather, and instead of these superhero abilities kind of being bestowed onto people in this fantasy-esque way, it's something that you can achieve through experimentation and science and biology. And anyone will tell you this about this book, the big draw of this book is that it follows 2 enemies that were once best friends in college. So people consider this a dark academia, which I guess you could call it that. Both of these people are also very damaged and morally gray in their own ways, and they kind of have this like codependent obsession with each other simultaneously, where both of their objectives are kind of in conflict with one another. So it's really fun to watch them think about each other and how they feel about the other person after this like enormous fallout. And then of course you're still following this sort of like supervillain-esque arc, and it's just like gritty and dark, but it's like super fun and fast paced. It also has one of my favorite tropes ever, which is the gruff, dark, older male character who like adopts this like pseudo little girl daughter. I don't know why I love that so much. That's like one of my favorite relationships ever. So it has 2 things I really like: the codependent friendship that turns sour, and also that like kind of found family father-daughter relationship trope. But yes, the sci-fi fantasy in this is really interesting. I will be reading the 2nd one this year. Next, I have Gideon the Ninth. I think think this is a maybe for me, which really surprises me because I was like so certain that this was gonna be a 5-star for me, and it wasn't, but it was still really, really good. So I wanna make that clear. I feel like I just maybe hyped it up in my mind because a lot of people whose taste I really trust and whose opinions are usually in line with mine, this is like one of their favorite books ever. I will say I loved so much about this book. I just think that I came away not as excited about it as I thought that I would be. This is about like a swordsmith named Gideon who comes from this planet that essentially is full of like necromancers or like death mages, basically. Like it's based off of the solar system essentially, where each planet kind of has its own export or has its own specialty. So Gideon and then our other main character, Harrow, are both from the same planet, and Harrow is, I think that she's got kind of like nobility in this setting. She is a necromancer, so she's very powerful. Essentially all of the heirs of these kind of like noble houses for each of these planets is invited by the emperor to engage in this series of trials to like ascend to almost like a demigod status and earn new powers, basically. So Harrow, who is the heir to the 9th house kind of family, needs to choose a cavalier to kind of fight in these trials with her. And Gideon is chosen by Harrow for this adventure, but what's fun about them two is they're also frenemies, kind of. Like, they do not get along at all, and they have this fun banter throughout the book. And I will say, like, this book is very funny. Like, it's very witty in a way that I would call millennial-esque. Like, if that's something that bothers you, I would not pick this book up. For me, it's like, I got it, I got the tone, it was fine. But I can see what other people mean by that. Personally, I thought it was fun, and I really, really liked watching their relationship develop. But for the most part, this is actually a locked door murder mystery. Because as the heirs and cavaliers are on this planet ready for this trial to start, people start getting plucked off one by one. People start coming up dead, and no one knows who's doing it, and there's a lot of finger pointing, and it becomes a locked door murder mystery. It is really fun, but a lot of people say this is quite confusing, and I would have to agree with that. And it's not because I couldn't really follow the world in this. My favorite part of this was the world building, and I do want to know more about this solar system type of like sci fantasy, almost like knighthood type of society that we're in, because I thought that that was really fun and super creative, and like there's a kitschiness to the aesthetic of this book and the kind of like tonal incongruous nature of it. Like, it's almost like anachronistic because everyone's fighting with like swords, but we're also like in outer space with like space shuttles and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't care about that. That is so cool and fun to me. But the reason why this gets confusing is I think that too many characters are introduced all at once, and there will be too many characters in a room talking all at once. And in the book, like, their stations and the house that they're from and their alliances matter a lot. So it's just a lot of people to keep track of, and it's a lot of alliances to keep track of. And to me, I was a little bit frustrated by that, and it did kind of affect my enjoyment of the book. But I really liked Harrow, and I really liked Gideon, and I really like this world we're in. I think it's so fascinating, so I will be reading the next one. But that's why it's not as strong as like a yes as the first two. Okay, I've been a little bit too positive, so let's get on to my next one. One Dark Window. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I really respect that so many people love this book. I get it. You know what I mean? I understand why people like this so much. I do think it's a unique world. Essentially, in this world, we're following Elspeth, who is afflicted by this demon that lives in her head because she went into this forbidden mist in this forest that essentially infects the people who enter it. And those symptoms all look different for everyone else, but obviously in this society, they are terrified of people who contract this like demonic illness from this mist, and they are told that they're going to be like taken somewhere to be quarantined, but you know, their families never see them again, and likely they're just kind of killed for being infected by this. And Elspeth is infected, but she's been able to keep it a secret because her affliction didn't start until she found one of these nightmare cards that belonged to, I think it was her uncle, which now she has a demon in her head, and that's kind of like her affliction. The magic system surrounds these cards that each have like their own ability, and people are able to kind of collect them and then in turn collect those abilities. There's a lot of trading and bargaining and stealing, and people with money are able to get more cards because they're able to purchase more, and they're very, very valuable because people want power, which is really fun. I do like the idea of a magic system surrounding like playing cards or like these magical cards. I do think that that's fun and creative, and I do think that the atmosphere of this book is fun. I love a misty, cold forest, and I think that that was written well in this book. Also, this book is really well known for its romantic subplot, and I guess, I guess. I just wasn't that gripped by, I kind of felt Elspeth was pretty boring, and I also wasn't that gripped by the romantic subplot in this. I thought, and I've said this before, I thought she was gonna have a romance with the nightmare demon that lived inside of her head. I thought that was gonna be so interesting, and I was very disappointed when we met a dark-haired, very tall boy named Raven, and like pretty much off the bat, they're automatically attracted to each other, and very unearned attraction, by the way, because they had only known each other for like literally a day before their like hearts are fluttering and like they want to be near each other all the time, and like it kind of just felt super unearned, this romantic subplot. And I think that this was sold to me as something that people really loved for that aspect, so I was like I don't really like this main character. I found the writing style to be quite young for an adult book. Like the whole time I was reading this, I thought I was reading YA, and then I realized it's in the adult section, and apparently it does get kind of steamy, and that's just very jarring to me because I found the writing style to be pretty rudimentary. But I'm not like judging other people who really enjoy it, because there are books that I have the same criticisms of and I still really like them. This one didn't work for me personally. If it worked for you, yeah, you won and I lost, right? If this worked for you, so, you know. But I will not be continuing to the second one, though people say it's better. Next, we have the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. Yes, I will be continuing this one. I picked this book up this year for the first time. I've already read 3 of these. I have such a warmth when I think about this series. Essentially, Murderbot is a sec unit, or like a security unit robot in this futuristic world where humans have been terraforming new planets as they're sort of like colonizing outer space, basically. What's interesting about Murderbot is that they have overridden their own programming so that they're able to download a bunch of soap operas and dramas to watch all day, because they have like very little interest in communicating with humans. They find it super awkward. They just want to be left alone. They don't want to be a sec unit. They don't want to be put in these situations. They don't want to have to defend anyone. They just want to watch their fun dramas. Like, there is a curiosity about humans by Murderbot, but at the same time, they find it super uncomfortable and out of their element to actually like have a relationship with them. So it follows Murderbot on various missions and various situations that they get into, and he has to kind of navigate his relationship with humanity and his own like sentience in each one of those missions. So I've really, really enjoyed this so far. I think it is so cute. I will say, after the third one, I kind of got the sense that the plot structures are very similar in each book, but I do find like a comfort in it, and I feel like it's really well done. So yes, of course, I will be continuing Murderbot Diaries. This one is kind of a cheat because technically I am caught up on this series, but it is like, I think, ongoing, and there is a novella that I haven't read yet. This is the Dr. Greta Helsing series. It's so fun. I've seen like very lukewarm reviews from other people whose, again, taste I really like on this, but if you have similar taste to me, I'm here to tell you, I think that this series is so cute and so fun, and like I just got it. Like, I got it the first time. Brief summary, this is about Dr. Greta Helsing. She is like the heir to this kind of like medical family, but their specialty is paranormal creatures. So for example, she has like a small independent practice where she treats like vampires who maybe there's like some blood disease that's going around, or mummies, and she treats their like skin conditions, and she knows about like, she knows how to like restructure bones, and she does like 3D printing whenever they fall and their bones turn to dust, and like ghouls, and she knows how to speak the ghoul language, and they live in the sewers, and then she helps them out with whatever is ailing them. It's just so like kitschy and fun and cute, and each book is kind of like an episode of a TV show. It feels like a fun like BBC kind of family TV show almost, like it's, or like an ABC like paranormal supernatural like comedy dramedy show, but there is always like a central mystery for each one of those books, so it kind of feels like an investigative, like it kind of feels like an investigative medical show if it was like campy and fun and supernatural. Mostly what was so charming about this to me was it's so much fun to play in that space of like, ooh, what would be like some sort of ailment or sickness or injury that certain supernatural species would have to deal with, and like how would she go about investigating what the best treatment plan is for that. Like there's something just so camp about this series, and I just really love it, and I highly recommend it if any of that sounds interesting to you. For books I don't have physicals of, first one would be Shatter Me. I have an entire YouTube video talking about my experience reading Shatter Me for the first time. This is a YA dystopian book, and it centers our main character named Juliet, and Juliet is, we start with her kind of imprisoned in this asylum for mentally ill people, I suppose, in this sort of dystopian world where anyone who's not, I guess, perfect is kind of like locked up. And it's in this world where like the ecosystem has been destroyed by global warming, and so food is very scarce, and it has kind of been overrun by this fascist regime. Juliet, the reason why she is in this situation is because she has been ostracized her entire life for having this unique ability to cause pain and death onto others through just physical touch. So she has never really been able to have closeness with anyone, and people fear her quite a bit. So the writing style kind of reflects that sort of like a mental state that she's in, but to me, it's so like, it's flowery, but it's not really sophisticated. Like it's flowery in like a 14-year-old making Tumblr posts way, and it's just very 2010. I feel like this would really hit if I were a teenager in 2010, but for me, I personally just struggled to look past the writing style and also the lack of any world building in this in the first one. There are like 9 books in the series, so I think we do get there eventually, but the kind of like center of the story is Juliet's relationship to her 2 love interests. Well, the first one in the first book is Adam, who's like this handsome boy with black hair and blue eyes and piercings and tattoos, and how they're trying to like escape this regime. And then there's also like Aaron Warner gets introduced, and he's like a military leader. He kind of like is preying on Juliet for her unique ability to cause pain and wants her to work for him as sort of like an interrogator because she's able to hurt people very easily. And like in theory, that kind of sounds cool. I just felt like I was reading this book and I was like, nothing is happening. Like literally 200 pages of this book is just Juliet waffling on about this like, woe is me, nobody likes me, no one wants to touch me, my family hates me because of my condition, which yes, that's very upsetting, and I would probably be behaving the same way. I just don't want to read about it in a book for that many pages. Anyway, I'm really sorry. I'm being really hard on it. I just really didn't like it, but I again, like if it's something you're really into, like I'm not judging you. I don't think I'm better than you. I want to make that super clear. I just like, there are books that I really like that are kind of like not the best, that other people despise and think are so trashy, that I will defend with my life. So like, I'm not meaning to come at this from like I'm above you any sort of way, but it doesn't really scratch any itches that I have personally. So I'm gonna say no, I will not be continuing Shatter Me. Next, I have a Clockwork Angel series. This is Cassandra Clare's extension of the Mortal Instruments series, which is kind of actually like the first YA series I ever read. I think I read 4 of those books, so I'm very familiar with that world. To be honest, I was actually very hesitant to read this one. I did it for an experiment where I read YA books that are really popular, and I was hesitant to read this one because even at 13 years old, I had issues with the Mortal Instruments series, but this one was written a little bit later on than that. And I do think that when I picked up the first one, it was better than a lot of the Mortal Instruments books. So I did really enjoy it. I think that I really have been craving that sort of Victorian paranormal atmosphere, and that book like really hits that mark. There's this girl named Tessa Gray, and she kind of gets swept up into the whole like shadow hunters universe. These shadow hunters are people who can see demons and other paranormal creatures and have to like hunt them, or essentially like keep them organized. Like vampires are allowed to exist, but they have to stay in their lane and they can't be hurting anyone. And so like the Conclave essentially is like a organization that kind of like law enforcement or something like that. And the reason she's kind of crossed the ocean to come to London in the first place is because her brother has been kidnapped. So she's with the Conclave and they're kind of trying to solve this central mystery. This is a very vampire heavy Shadowhunters book, which I really like because I do like the vampires in Shadowhunters. I had some issues with it. I don't feel like I was like as gripped by this book as like my friend read it recently, and she just kind of ate it up. Like she loved it for some reason, which I totally respect. And I felt like I should have had that experience, but I don't know if it was at the time I read it. I felt very detached. I think I was really busy with work when I read it, but I will say, like I said, the ambiance is really good. I like Will Herondale. I think he's a really fun character. He's kind of like the princessy male love interest with dark hair who's like bantery and silly kind of guy. But I was like, yeah, this was like a decent time. Like, I like this world. I could be in it more. I would find this book really hard to get into if you're unfamiliar with Shadowhunters though, to be honest, because the way that they talk about the lore of this really fun supernatural world is just that Tessa has like this lore book by her bed that she reads every night, and then as she's reading it, the narration like just info dumps everything you need to know about that supernatural creature because it's gonna be relevant in like the coming chapters. And I found that to be a little bit excruciating. But if you're looking for something like plot heavy and fast paced, this would be the one. Again, I like the atmosphere. Characters are pretty good. I would maybe pick up the second one. It's not on my radar for right now. Next is Once Upon a Broken Heart. I had a lot of thoughts about this book. On one hand, I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of this, and I think that it's unique in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, I thought that it just underestimates the reader so much in a way that I kind of walked away from this book being a little bit infuriated. And I do have more thoughts about that in my reading vlog. This is about a girl named Evangeline. She's really cute. She's a girly girl. I do like Evangeline. But anyways, she gets her heart broken when her boyfriend, her love interest at the time, is being wed off to her sister, her stepsister. So she goes to the Prince of Broken Hearts temple and she prays to them and kind of asks him to assist with her broken heart. And he appears to her, and his name is Jax, and he is this handsome, witty, kind of wild card character. And he says, I will help you, but you owe me 3 kisses and I will tell you when those kisses are owed. And his kiss actually has like magical abilities in it. So they're kind of used throughout the story to assist with her goal of mending her broken heart. What I like about this is I thought that Stephanie Garber clearly has like very good taste. That's one thing I noticed about her. I was like, ooh, she understands whimsy in a way I really appreciate. Like, the way things were described were really cutesy. Like, I love the idea of like, oh, the teacups are served by like hummingbirds or whatever. Like, the steam on the tea is pink. Like, she's dressed up like in this outfit that kind of looks like a strawberry shortcake with like a bunch of frills that look like frosting. Like, oh, when you walk through the gates of this, you know, castle for this party where the prince is going to select his betrothed, there's a sculpture of the prince, and then there's a sculpture of a woman, and the woman's face changes to the girl's face, whoever is walking through the door, so it looks like you're standing next to the prince. Like, stuff like that, that is so playful. Those little details that I thought really made the world come to life, and I really appreciated it. But I just had so many issues with the way that this book underestimated the reader. As I said, like, you would be told basically when a plot twist was coming and what it was gonna be. And like, there's plausible deniability from the author to be like, well, I didn't tell you exactly what it was gonna be, but she basically would. Like, it'd be so on the nose. It'd be so obvious what was being set up, to the point where it's like, do you think your readers are like not smart enough to understand that we're supposed to be surprised by a plot twist? Like, do you think that your readers are scrolling on their phones at the same time as they're reading your book? Like, if they're paying attention, you don't need to do all of this. Like, you can do a little bit of foreshadowing, but it was just so heavy-handed that I was just frustrated because I felt like nothing was a surprise to me. I saw everything coming from a mile away. And I know that it's written for teens, it's YA, but like, teenagers are smart people, and a lot of the people picking this book up aren't teens either, and they really like it. But I just felt like it was so obvious. Like, it was way too obvious. It just treated the reader like so dumb. Also, Evangeline is like a little bit infuriating. She kind of is so oblivious that it's almost like I have to suspend my disbelief that someone could be this oblivious to what's happening around them. Despite the fact that I did actually like her as a character, because I'm always pro girly girl main character. I think that is so fun. And I really like Jax, and I like Evangeline. Like I said, I like the characters in this. I just didn't like how things were revealed, and I didn't really like the writing style. Like, there was just some sentences where I was like, ooh, that syntax just felt a little bit icky. I respect this book. I respect the hype that it has. I just don't think it's for me, so Probably not. I probably won't continue with this. Next one is The Stolen Heir, like the Prisoner's Throne. That's like an extension of Holly Black's The Cruel Prince universe. And it follows a character from that book, but aged up a bit. And he's now kind of like this heir to the throne. And he enlists the help of our main character, Ren, who is kind of like an ugly greenish type of low type of fae, which I think is really, really fun. I thought that was really, really fun. It was really fun to follow a low fae in Holly Black's kind of fae universe. I really like the way that she does fae. So I really liked following someone who's from a lower court as opposed to like the high fae, which are all beautiful in the way that like Cardan was. So that was fun, but she essentially is like rogue in the human world, and she has been essentially like homeless, like living on the streets of the human world and just kind of trying to keep her head down so she doesn't get discovered, just trying to survive. And then her childhood friend, the heir to the throne, Oak, enlists her help with this epic kind of journey that he has to go on. And so they go back to Elfheim, or like the Fae land, and they go on this epic journey, and it's pretty fun. It's got like bog witches and like magical prisons and like fairy parties and like all that kind of stuff that I really do like about Holly Black's fae. Whimsical, and it's still pretty dark. Like there are dark elements of this, and the romantic subplot is like quite cute. They're kind of like friends who lost touch in a way. And so I liked the first one, but that's kind of the extent of my appreciation for it. Like I liked it. Did I love it? No. Did I think about it that much after I finished it? No. Do I have much interest in picking up the second one? No. So that's why this is a no. But it's not that I have that big of a problem with the book itself. I just think that I just didn't have anything to grip onto in this one, that's all. The next one, The House Made by Freida McFadden. No, I'm not finishing this series. The first book was so mediocre. It's about this woman named Millie who gets out of prison and she's looking for a job. And so she gets a job through Craigslist working as a housemaid and a nanny for this really wealthy family. And the mother of the house is very paranoid and very erratic, and also just mistreats her horribly. And the man of this house is this like handsome, successful, level-headed, great father type character. And as she's working for them, some kind of tension is exposed to her. There's some weirdness around the relationship of the husband and wife, and all we know is that someone gets murdered. We are told that in the beginning of the book, something happened in the attic. And so you spend the rest of the book reading, trying to figure out where this is gonna go, who was killed, who did the killing, and dissecting this family's relationship, basically. It was just basic. I don't know how to describe it. It was just basic. Like, I didn't feel like this was a jaw-dropping plot twist. I didn't feel like the writing style was anything special in any way. I just felt generally underwhelmed with this book. A lot of people, I think most people can agree this isn't like mind-blowing work, but it is a quick read, and I guess I could agree with that. For me personally, it wasn't a quick read because I struggled to care enough to pick it up, but that's my experience with it. Other people are like, yeah, if I just want to read something quick and not think that hard, Freida McFadden is a good one. So I don't know. But my opinion is like, I don't see why I would care about what happens to Millie in the second book. It's kind of weird to me that a sequel even exists in the first place, to be honest. Like I kind of think this would have been better as a one and done. Whatever goes on in the second book is none of my business. I literally could care less. Okay, the last series, and again, this is one that I just wanted to mention. Reign and Ruin. I wanted to mention this because this is a Kindle Unlimited self-pub book, and it is a romantasy, which is in theory a genre that I would really like, but I struggle as a reader to find romantasy that really grips me because I'm someone who, I love fantasy. I want the fantasy to be done well, and I also want the relationship to be done well, and I don't really want to have to rely on spice as like to convince me of these characters' attraction and bonding and tension. I really do want there to be some sort of buildup, and I kind of feel like it fails on both levels a lot of times with popular books. This one really surprises me though. This is a very highly political fantasy world. It's a Turkish inspired fantasy world. This is about the Sultan's daughter named Naime, who is in this interesting position where she has to placate the viziers and the royal court in the face of her father being diagnosed with this degenerative disease that's affecting his memory and personality and just overall ability to rule. And she's also trying to simultaneously keep it a secret just how bad her father's condition is, because she doesn't want to lose control of these very envious scheming viziers that exist in this court who are all vying for power in their own way, and she's really trying to maintain it in her family because she knows that if it gets into their hands, she can't trust what they would do with it. Most of this book is a political intrigue plot. It's a lot of talking and scheming and planning and gossiping, I will say. It's not too much action. There are some action scenes and there is like high stakes in this, but I would say it's very heavy on the political intrigue side, which I really like, so that's why I enjoyed it so much. And despite the fact that it is like a romantasy, the romance part of this doesn't actually start until 100 pages in when we meet Makram, who is the heir to the throne of this neighboring kingdom that is actually an enemy kingdom. They have like split off from this empire basically, and they have death mages, and in this world, in the kingdom that Naime rules, death mages have been outcast and banned essentially, but Makram isn't death mage, and his kingdom is suffering a famine, and they don't have very many allies right now because people are terrified of destruction mages and death magic essentially, despite the fact that it's not inherently used for evil. So this book follows elemental magic and elemental mages, but the way that the magic is used is really fun. Like Naime, for example, is it a first house mage? I'm forgetting, but she is a air mage essentially. So one thing that she can do with her magic is she can manipulate wind to be able to like say something under her breath and then have it carry directly into the ear of whoever she's trying to communicate with. She also has like really good hearing because again, she can manipulate sound waves. So it's stuff like that where it's like, oh, that is really creative use of elemental magic that you don't get to see as often. So I thought this book was really fun because clearly this author had a lot of fun writing magic and bringing it to life in a really unique way, despite the fact that elemental magic is like a pretty common thing to have in a fantasy book. But I just thought like the family relationships in this were really well done. Naime's relationship with her father, and then also her cousin, and in this sort of situation where her father is like alive and there, but she's dealing with like grieving him already, and also trying to maintain his legacy and keep his court together. The high stakes were really good. And then the way that the romance unfolds, like, I won't say this is super slow burn, which I know is a turnoff for people, but as someone who requires a slow burn romance, I can tell you it's really well done, and I really did still enjoy it because I felt that the attraction that these two characters had to each other was very realistic and very justified. These are two very attractive people, and they are put in these very daunting situations, and then once we do get those scenes of them kind of romantically connecting, they're so well done. Like the romance scenes in this, to me personally, are so dreamy because they feel so intimate. Like that's something I've noticed in a lot of romantasy series kind of lacks intimacy. I think it jumps straight into like, what is the checklist of the smut type of scenes that people want to see on TikTok so that they know to pick up my book? I don't think that this book does that. I think that it really aims to make the reader believe how intimate this situation that they're in is, and for me it was just very believable. It was like, ooh, like it was so good. And so what's fun about this series though is it's actually an anthology series where every book follows a different couple, which is great for me because I always get bored once they're together, so I don't have to deal with that, and I get to follow other characters in the series, which I'm really excited about because there are some side characters that were introduced that I'm excited about. But Naime's work with restoring balance in her empire and maintaining her court is not done by the end of the first book. So there's still much to get to on the political side, and then also evolving this world building that I'm really eager to continue on with. And I just like can't wait to see how different couples will be written by this author who I've already decided is really good at romance. So if you haven't read that yet, I really highly recommend it, especially if you're someone who does like romantasy, but you're also like, oh, but I want there to be something else going on that's really interesting. This would be actually a really good one, I think, especially if you're a political intrigue fan. So that is Reign in Ruin. Please pick it up. I want more people to talk about it. Let me know what you think about any of these. Are there any of these that you think that I shouldn't give up on? You can convince me. Try to convince me, honestly. I would be happy to hear if there's a book that I said I'm not going to continue where you're like, no, you need to trust me, trust me. I would hear you out, honestly. I'm kind of curious, so let me know. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!